All right, so this is part 3 of the auditory drill, and that is correction techniques. All right. So again, I just want to reemphasize that we are focusing on some multisensory experiences. So when we are correcting the students and they're going to be doing some practicing, the practice is also multisensory. And when they practice, it's repetitive, and usually they do it 3 times. So I'll give you some examples in just a second. You can, when they're practicing, when they've made an error and they're practicing, they can use any of the materials that we talked about before, the dry erase board, the sand, anything to practice those concepts again. And one of the most important things is that you want to be recording their errors. So if they've made a mistake, you want to make a note somewhere, and there are different ways that you can manage note taking. So I'll talk a little bit about that in part 4 in the management section on ways that you can keep track of who says what, when they make mistakes, what the mistakes are, because that's a really important part of this kind of intervention approach. All right. One thing that's really important, I have to always tell the kids, is that rule number 1 is no guessing. So I tell them you need to use your strategies. We teach them strategies, and we provide scaffolding so that the students shouldn't really never be in a position where they're guessing randomly. For example, they're making, a very educated guess. I shouldn't say there's never any guessing. They're making educated guesses based on different resources, different strategies that they've been taught. Okay. And again, we add scaffolding as needed based on the age of the student, what the concepts are, what the mistakes are. And I'll go over like different examples of what kind of errors they might actually make. So here is the first example. Let's say that you tell the student, say, and they say, and you say, what says, and they have no idea. They're like, I don't know. So the first thing you always do is give them the keyword. And I think for the most part, most of us are using foundation. So the keyword would be up for the letter U. So you would tell them, not sure what it is. Okay, that's okay. The keyword is up. And some of the letters also, especially the vowels, you might have some hand motion. So the hand motion for up is usually that. So you will say the keyword is up. And if they still don't remember, then you can either remind them to use their resources. They can look at an alphabet line or a sound wall or other reference. Let's say it's something like the letter B. You say, what says B? And they know B says B, but they can't remember like which one it is. You can say, make your bed. There's different visuals we have. Sometimes we say, look at your B hand. So there's, some different strategies, and we'll talk more about that on another video as well. However, you don't want this to be like a 5-minute process. This needs to be quick. You're giving them 2 seconds. And if they really cannot get that within a couple seconds, then you're just giving them explicit instruction. So for you, you would go ahead and just say, you says, and then they're going to practice it. So they practice it. Say, I'm just going to use the dry erase board because it's easier for me to do. But they would say, you up, you up, you up. Now, sometimes to make it fun, what I'll do is I'll have them practice twice with their eyes open. You up, you up, and then I'll say, see if you can do it with your eyes closed. And so they'll close their eyes and say, you up, and it's always, fun to see like, oh, how awful is it? Or, oh, it was so good. I did such a good job. So that's kind of a fun little thing you can do too. And actually closing their eyes, there's a reason behind that. It's not just fun. When they're, they're looking, they're watching as they're making those first two, the first 2 graphemes. But then on the third one, they're imagining what it would be. So you're actually kind of tricking them into increasing their memory, I guess is a good way to say it. You're making those connections. So that's a fun little trick there. All right. Okay. Another error that they might make is to just write the wrong letter, or the wrong formation. One thing that is fairly common, especially with young learners, is that they might make a They might try to imitate a font like the letter A or the letter G, can look a little funny. So I explicitly teach them we're not making this kind of A. This is the kind of A that you would see in a book or on the computer. But when you're writing it, I want you to make this one. So this is the letter that we're making. So you might need to actually explicitly teach that letter formation for the A and the G especially. Another common one is the Q, right? So you might have to teach sometimes the Q looks like this, right? Because it could actually be three different versions. Our Q can look like this. Our Q can have a point, or the Q can actually look like a 9, right? So seeing these three different versions, you're just going to have to decide which one am I asking them to make. And again, I think we should probably just follow whatever we want to be in alignment with the classroom. So whatever they're doing for tier 1, we'll try to do the same thing. But let's say for the Q, they actually make a G. Okay, let's say they're like that. You will explicitly teach. This is actually a G, so you're not going to make the G, okay? You're actually going to make a Q. And look, the tail points up to the U. Look at it. It's pointing to its friend U. And then they're going to go ahead and do the multisensory practice 3 times, making that Q, saying Q-U, queen, qua, Q-U, queen, qua, Q-U, queen, qua, making sure that they're actually making that doing the formation correctly. And again, as they're doing all this, you're making a quick note that Q is one that they're going to be practicing. You're going to embed that next time. All right. Another thing they might do is to make the uppercase letter instead. That's a common one, especially like the J's, J, G, very common. M, that kind of thing. They might make that instead. And you're going to say, that's the uppercase letter. Can you make the lowercase letter for me? And if they do, you're good. You don't really need to, they just, did the uppercase instead. As long as they know what it is, I wouldn't necessarily practice that. If they don't know the formation of the lowercase letter, then you would want to go ahead and do an error correction. All right. Another error that they might make, this one is fairly common with certain phonemes, is instead of saying like the unvoiced and the voiced th. So if you say and they repeat, and instead of saying they actually say right? We get that a lot. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it. Or the same thing with the voiced th, say and they say right? So you're going to want to go ahead and explicitly teach that we're saying the letter this way. You're going to explicitly teach them that. You can use some tools such as a mirror. Okay, you can get a mirror. I would recommend one that does not break. Child-proof mirror to help them see the shape of their mouth and what they need to, or how they form those sounds. Being able to look at their face actually can help. There are some really great visuals. For example, most sound walls or vowel valleys have visuals that show what the mouth should be doing when you are making each phoneme. Another thing that can be helpful is a phonics phone, or sometimes we call them whisper phones. So I'm happy to share some of these with everybody. So I should have demonstrated, is you put, one side up to your ear, one side up to your mouth, and it amplifies the sound so you can really hear it well. And I would recommend not being careful to just share with kids. So you could just take like a Sharpie and write their name or something, just to make sure you don't want to be sharing the phone. All right, so let's see, what else? Mouth formation. Okay, if they are having difficulty with that articulation piece, you want to slow everything down as much as possible. You want to provide visuals for them to help them. Most kids will self-correct. It can be frustrating for some kids, so you're going to have to make your a judgment, like use your professional judgment to decide, is this something that I want to keep practicing, like in the moment, or are we just going to practice it, once a day? We're going to do a quick kind of thing where we're practicing articulation. But it's usually not helpful to focus on it too much, because then the student might start to get frustrated and upset. So I would just, kind of be aware of moving on, I guess, and not getting stuck. Like if they really are just not able to say, like the voiced th, for example, the sound, move on, practice it a little bit later. Like don't feel like you have to get it perfectly right before you move on. Again, that's something that most of the time it is corrected over time. And let's see, what's another one? Oh, okay. So they might forget an additional grapheme. So here's an example. I say zzz, and the kids say zzz, and I'll say, what says zzz? And they say, Z says zzz. And that is absolutely correct. It does. But if I've already taught them that there is a second grapheme that can say zzz, right, I'm going to expect them to do another one. So what I would say is, you're right, Z says zzz, but there's another letter that's going to say zzz. Can you remember what it is? And so maybe they're going to remember that it's actually an S. Only if we've taught this. If not, I'm going to give them the keyword. So Foundation's keyword for that voiced S is bugs. So I would say the keyword is bugs. And hopefully that would help to remind them of like what it is. If not, you're going to do some explicit instruction. Remember that when you have a word with a short vowel, at the end, if it has an S, it might actually be voiced. It might say zzz. Remember that? And so you're going to explicitly remind them, and then you're going to have them do the multi-sensory practice. So you're going to say S, bugs, zzz. S, bugs, zzz. Last time, S, bugs, zzz. All right. So that would be an example for if they are forgetting an additional grapheme. You're just going to ask them, what's the other one, or what else can say that? Give them the keyword, and then do explicit instruction if you need to. All right. Last thing. Okay, this is the last thing. This is actually really important. If you find that during your auditory drill you have more than one or two corrections that are taking place, then you need to consider your pacing, maybe how quickly you're going through new concepts, or how many phonemes you're giving in your drill. So really there should not be more than one or two errors and error corrections happening. And actually that rule of one or two errors, like per, I hate to give like a definite number, but like 5, 10, within like 10 minutes, that's going to give you good information. Like, this is the student, I'm going too fast. I'm asking too much of them if they're making like this level of errors. And on the other side, like the reverse side, if they're consistently not making any errors, you need to think about increasing your pace, introducing concepts a little more quickly, because if they're nailing it all the time, that means that you're not actually doing your job. It means that you need to go, you need to increase those expectations, because the goal isn't, that they are in the middle of learning a sequence and it's perfectly perfect. No, you're going to keep going. So you might want to increase the pace of introducing new concepts. All right, I think that's it. So thanks again for